Hi everyone, this is Mindy and welcome back for another Lawn Fawn video. In today's video, we are going to be creating a nighttime sky using the Starry Sky Stencil. I'm going to start off first by creating my background, and I'll do the Copic coloring later for the images. So I'm starting with a piece of white cardstock that I die cut using the Slimline with the flaps die. And I'm going to ink blend on here Merman, Forget Me Not, and Blue Jay ink from Lawn Fawn. I'm starting towards the bottom of the Slimline card with the Merman, which is the lightest of the three colors, and I'm using a foam blending tool to do this. I'm just applying that in circular motions going part way up. I don't need to go all the way to the bottom because that is going to be covered up by grass. Next, I'm coming in with the Forget Me Not ink, blending that into the Merman, and I'm adding multiple layers of ink on here to just help kind of smooth those out. Being that this is a nighttime sky, it doesn't have to be a completely smooth blend, and I'm also going to be covering up a lot of it with images that I'm going to Copic color later on. So this last color at the very top is Blue Jay ink, so it's a really nice dark blue ink to tie into my nighttime background. Then I'm just going to bring in my previous colors, go back over them to kind of smooth out that transition just a little bit. Next, I'm going to add my stencil. So I will bring in the Starry Sky Stencil, and I'm going to attach this to my card front by flipping this over, and I'm going to hold it in place to the stencil just using some Post-it tape. You could use a pixie spray, which is a low-tack spray adhesive, but I only really use that if there's some fine lines in the stencils, and this doesn't have any fine lines, so the Post-it tape is going to hold really well. Now I'm going to try out this Stickles glitter gel in Moon Dust. I'll give you a close-up look of it here shortly. It is packed with some beautiful glitter in here. I haven't used this kind before. I did practice with something else previously on a different card, and I'll show you that at the very end, so be sure to stick around. I'm just going to take my palette knife and I'm going to scoop this up and just spread this evenly over my entire background. Now you can see it definitely is a gel texture and it has a ton of sparkle in here. So I'm going to make sure I have all of the openings on my Starry Stencil covered. Now you want to make sure that when you are done using this, you wipe off your tools right away. So I have a baby wipe off on the side that I'll use to wipe up my palette brush, but then the stencil I'm going to take over to my sink and just rinse it off with some warm water and soap and let it dry. Because the Lawn Fawn inks are not really water reactive, I can just scoop any of the excess back into the jar and it's not contaminated with any color. And I do recommend wiping off the edge of your bottle. That way it's not stuck shut when you go to open that again. Now I can carefully remove my stencil, just peeling that back up off of the Post-it tape. And I'll give you a close-up of all of this sparkle, and I'm going to set it off on the side to dry. So this is why I did my background first. I wanted to give this plenty of time to dry. Now the stamp sets that I'll be using to color in images is a Bug Deal. I'll be using the branches and the leaves. I have Superstar, the Crazy Antics, Just My Type, and Dandy Day. And I'm using mainly the mouse images off of this. From Crazy Antics, I am bringing in some of the food. So here I lined up a lot of the images that I wanted to use. You could definitely just stick with a Bug Deal and have all the cute little bugs in the trees, but I just really head over heels for these cute little mice. So that's why I kind of went through my stamp sets to see what I could tuck into the branches. So I'm stamping them in the Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink onto the Lawn Fawn white cardstock, and I do stamp them twice just to make sure I have all of these in a crisp outline. And off screen, I am going to go ahead and stamp the branches, and then we'll be ready for some Copic coloring. Now I will have my colors listed at the top of the screen as always, so you can reference those at any time. Here are the branches. I did 3 branches. You can see 2 of them are in the same direction. The other one I flipped so I can have them scattered throughout my card. and I'm going to start by coloring the leaves. Now I have a 4-color combo, but you could certainly get away with 2 or 3 if you prefer, or if you're limited on the Copic markers. I'm starting with YG67, adding a dark layer of that color to the bottom of each of those leaves. Then I'll come in with the YG17, adding a little bit more up towards the top of the leaf. I'm going to add just a smidge of the YG13 and then top it off with YG21, which is a really nice bright color and I thought would look really cool, like the light from the stars was kind of making that glow just a little bit. So I'm going to color the rest of the leaves here in those same colors, and I have 2 more stamped off screen that I'll color those as well, so I'll have a total of 8 leaves ready for my card. For the branches, I'm going to use another 4-color combo, starting with the E49, which is a super dark brown, and I'm making sure wherever I think the light from the stars is going to hit first, that's what I want to keep as my lightest color. So my darkest color is going to be towards the bottom of the branches, which is the E49, and I'm adding that to each of those, and then I'll bring in an E37, and I'll add that just kind of right over the top, blending down just a little bit. Then I'll do an E35 to extend that out just a little bit. And it's hard to get into some of those branches, so it's okay if you color it in. Not every area has to have the full color combination. It's okay to just fill it in with whatever last color you have, which in this case, the E35 did fill in quite a bit of those branches or those really small areas. And then I'll top it off with an E33, which is going to be the lightest color. Now, if you really wanted to make it look like it was glowing from the light of the stars, you could add a very light yellow to the top of that, and I think that would look really cool as well. So after I finish off these 2 branches, I'll go up to that top one that's kind of flipped in the other direction, and I'm going to use the same color combination, just making sure my shadow is at the very bottom of the branch and leaving the lightest area at the top. So you always want to think of it as what would the light hit first, and that is going to be your lightest area. Next, I'll move on to coloring in my mice. Now I colored them all in the same color. I am using E44 is that dark one for the shadow. Then I'll bring in an E43 to blend it out just a little, and E42. And E42 does fill in quite a bit of the areas. The E41 I saved for just the tippy top part of the face and then the belly. I think this is just a really cute soft brown color combination, so it's definitely a go-to when I'm coloring in these cute mice. And I'll use that throughout all of the mice, just changing up where that darkest shadow is going to be. I kind of had this all lined out ahead of time, so I knew if I needed to kind of adjust the shadows a little bit. After I have all of the mice colored in, I'm going to bring in an R02, and I'm going to use that for the ears and the little tips of their noses. I didn't add any real shading or layering to the ears just because they are such a small area. So I just kept it with the single color. And that little speech bubble I'm going to leave too. I'm not going to color that speech bubble in. Next I have the telescope. So I wanted to add just a pop of color to kind of contrast with my background. So that's why I chose the reds. And after everything is colored, I'm going to line up the coordinating dies, hold them in place with the Post-it tape, and then run these through my die cut machine. While my background is still drying, I'm going to work on die cutting some images for the scene of my card. So I have Lift the Flap Meadow, and I'm going to cut out this tree trunk from paper bag, and the top of that tree trunk piece is going to be from craft cardstock. So I'm going to have a little peekaboo window on my card. Then I'm also going to die cut out 2 grassy borders out of the rainforest cardstock, and I'm going to bring in my first Slimline die, which is from Slimline Lift the Flaps, and I'm going to die cut out my grassy borders using that. That way my stitched edges will match my card front. And one last piece to die cut is the large Slimline with sliders die. This is the largest out of there, and that's going to be the base of my card, so I die cut that from Blue Jay cardstock. Now here I'm taking a piece of white cardstock and trimming that down just a little bit so it's going to create a white border around my ink blended panel. I'll have those measurements listed on the screen for you, but I made sure it fit right in between or inside of those stitched lines of the background. Now, my stars were not dry yet, so I'm speeding that process up with a heat tool. I forgot that these stickles do take a long time to dry. I forgot about that. It probably had been sitting for an hour and still wasn't completely dry, so I actually smudged one of my stars at the top, which is okay. I was not wasting this background. I'm totally going to use it. And now I'm just working on putting my bottom half of my background together. Now, what I thought was really fun was I was going to make, like, there was a little mouse in here with some food while everybody's out looking at the stars. There's a mice kind of snitching all the food. So I just cut a piece of sunflower cardstock to fit behind that flap. And then I'm adding one of the mice in there with a piece of watermelon. So I'm just adding that with the tape runner. And then I'm going to attach the stump to this little piece of cardstock. So kind of like a glowing light like inside of their house. And I thought was just really super cute to do with this lift the flap on that tree stump. So adding little bits of that tape runner around the door. You don't want to put it on the door of that flap, otherwise your flap won't open. And then just lining that up over it, making sure I'm getting that little mouse in there. And I can push down and that adhesive will attach over the cardstock. So super cute, just an idea if you wanted to add more of a background to the inside of your stump than just the grass from the background. Then the rest of this is just a matter of attaching all of my images. So some of them I did think of to add some foam squares to. The rest are mainly just added on with the tape runner, and that does hold up really well against that stickles that we applied to the background. And I just think those stars look so cool popping through, and these little mice are just enjoying a beautiful night out. Adding some of the leaves, I tried to keep them in threes. I like to work in odd numbers. One's viewing the stars with a telescope. Another one is snacking on a piece of cheese. I thought was cute. Instead of like a bag of popcorn, he's snacking on his cheese. And then I trimmed off the excess of the branches and adding this to the front of my cardstock. So you can see I have that white border there and then the base of that blue jay cardstock. Now in all of this, I didn't have anywhere to put a sentiment, and I wanted to have a sentiment, but I loved the scene so much out of this. So I'm actually going to create the card base and put a sentiment in the inside. And if you've watched me before, I don't do this very often. So I'm creating a card base. Again, I'll have measurements on the top of the screen for you. I'm just folding that in half and then reinforcing that fold with the bone folder. And I'm going to stamp a sentiment in here that's from the Starry Sky stamp set. I'm using my Misty tool and my Misty corners to help line up all of my sentiments. You could certainly use blocks if you wanted to. I just feel more confident using the Misty corners with my Misty tool. By putting your sentiments kind of on your cardstock and then pushing it up a little bit wherever you want it to be on your inside of your card, that helps make sure that everything is completely straight. So I stamped in Forget-Me-Not ink and sunflower ink. And I did actually fold the top half or the top flap of my card over to do that stamping so nothing was overhanging. So once that's all stamped, I'm going to just take that tape runner and I'm going to add that to the front of my card and attach my card front to this. So I am really loving this scene, and those stars are so gorgeous. And here we lift the flap and we have this really cute little image in there of him having a snack. And I'll give you a close-up look of what these stickles look like. It's very subtle. I've used stickles before, but not this kind. This is moon dust. So this is very subtle. Now, of course, I like to make a card first before I come and do a video. So I did do one off screen, and on that one, I used some glacier paste. And this is in the silver. And this, you can see, has a totally different look to the stars. It really pops out, makes them shiny, sticks out a little bit more. It's really, really pretty. Both, cards look exactly the same, just a matter of changing up what color you're using for your stars. So just a fun twist that you can use with your stencils. And then here I'll have a look at the inside of the card again as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.